welcome to an adventure in Australian literature. And it's summer. It's summer. And one of the things that's so nice about summer is picnics. And we're going to go for a picnic for Valentine's Day. And every single Australian just heard panpipes. I'll explain that in a minute. So if you want to support us, there is our shop where we have books and writing services, and there is also our Redbubble shop where we have over 100 designs. That is a way that you can support this channel and the videos that we make every week. If you don't want to spend any money, that's fine. Like, comment, subscribe, and share. So that is how you support us with these videos. So what are we doing? I think just about every Australian watching this has guessed, and you've already read the title, Picnic at Hanging Rock by Joan Lindsay. Now, Picnic at Hanging Rock is an Australian Gothic. Now, I have a very old video about Australian Gothic, but I did not talk about Picnic at Hanging Rock in that video. Why not? Because Picnic at Hanging Rock is really a seminal work of Australian literature. It was written by Joan Lindsay, who wrote only one other book, and her other book is nothing like Picnic at Hanging Rock. It is a unique work, one of those funny works that come out of a writer and they don't really produce anything else. And it really embedded itself within the Australian psyche when in 1975 it was adapted into a film by Peter Weir. So that's the film with the girls in the white lawn dresses who climb up the rock and disappear. So I think just about everybody will have some image when I say Picnic at Hanging Rock. Now, what people may not realise is Picnic at Hanging Rock, in spite of its 1900 setting and its very old-fashioned style of writing, Picnic at Hanging Rock was actually published in 1967. So it is a much more modern book than anybody sort of realizes. That when Peter Weir made this into a film in 75, this book was a popular contemporary novel set in the past. And that, I think, is part of the magic of this book. It is written in a much older fashion than a book that you would expect for 1967. However, a lot of the content in it, when you hear 1967, makes an awful lot more sense. Hanging Rock is a real place. It is located in the Macedon Ranges in Victoria. It is a site that borders the 3 different Indigenous nations, the Wiradjuri, the Jara, and the Turungurun peoples who use this as a meeting place and is considered I believe a sacred site. That is true. Everything else is fiction. No girls, Appleyard College didn't exist, no girls disappeared. It's an Australian Gothic. Now, Australian Gothic is quite different to European Gothic, which plays on old culture and old ideas and foreignness, and generally has a bit of a to look at truly Gothic novels, the 18th century Gothic novels. Her ladyship had a look at one, and it had sort of a Scooby-Doo ending, because that's what Gothic novels are like. They're all full of latent desire, and generally there's a certain religious overtone to a lot of them, but they're about latent desire, and it's aided by the darkness and the Gothic architecture and a lot of things like that we don't have here. We can have a truly hypnotic Gothic novel with a blue sky, a bright sun, and a 31-degree day. How do we do that? This is about women. Most Australian Gothic is male. This one is quite unique in that it is about and by a woman. It's got a very female focus. Now, just with European Gothic, there is a question of desire in the Australian Gothic. But the way that it is explored is quite different. So this story takes place on St. Valentine's Day, or it begins on St. Valentine's Day in 1900. The Queen is still on the throne. Australia hasn't federated yet. The old order is still in place. Very deliberately chosen by Joan Lindsay. Remember, she's writing in 1967. A group of schoolgirls, 20 schoolgirls, leave from Appleyard College in the Macedon Ranges and travel to Hanging Rock with 2 teachers and a carter. Now, they're going for a picnic, to have a picnic at Hanging Rock as a day off, an enjoyable day off. Their teachers are the French teacher and their mathematics teacher. The girls have been told they may not take their gloves off until they leave the outskirts of town. They are hot, they are tired, they get grumbly because they're teenage girls and it's 31 degrees. And they're laced up in corsets and European style clothes, which at 31 degrees, not fun. So you start to see the effect of the land on the characters very quickly. Now, I have another older video called 10 Things I Learned from about Australian Writing from Patrick White, and one of those is we always talk about the weather. This book is one of the most sensual books that I think you will find in Australian writing. The girls are all in a good mood. Otherwise, they've all been giving each other Valentine's Day cards. Supposedly these come from men, but they don't really. They're all anonymous. They're all the girls giving each other cards. 3 girls are seniors. They're sitting at the front of the dray. They are considered the most sensible girls in the school: Miranda, Marion, and Irma. They're also from 3 of the most important families at the school. These are all the girls of very wealthy families. They are going to Appleyard College to learn how to be proper English ladies. Not Australian ladies, English ladies, to be able to fit in the wider world of the empire. They're not being trained for domestic lives. They're being trained to be in an overseas manner, to exist in that world, or to maintain the facade of that world within Australian society. They go to this rock, to the picnic ground, where another family, also very wealthy, very detached from the world around them, are having a picnic. They have their picnic and they find that their watches have stopped. Everyone's watch has stopped at midday. The carter says, I promise to have you back by 8. We should make sure we leave by 5. Okay, it's about 4. Can we go? The three girls, Miranda, Marion, and Irma, want to go and see closer to the rock, which one of the teachers allows. That is the last that their teacher will see of those 3 girls. They take with them Edith, a younger girl, 14, who asks to go along but then whines and complains the whole time. But she's important. She will become an important witness. They are seen by the young man and the carter, the 2 young men from the other picnicking group, crossing the stream. This is the only time that they will see these girls again, or at least some of them. They climb the rock, and 3 of the girls disappear. Edith comes screaming back down the rock, back to the picnic ground, saying that they've disappeared. Miranda and the other girls have disappeared. While they are looking for those girls, they discover that the maths teacher has also disappeared. They return to the school, and this starts the mystery of what happened to these women, to these young women, and this older woman who never came back. Huge search for them. Men, dogs, everything. Cannot find a single trace of any of the girls. And this is a catalyst for everything else that happens in the novel. Now, what makes this interesting, or so interesting in terms of it being a Gothic novel, an Australian Gothic novel, is there are actually 3 categories of people in this novel. We'll start with the most repressed, as it were, but they're not repressed as such. They're not repressed in a European religious manner, because one of the big things about Australian Gothic is it has no religious overtones. It never has. In fact, in the entire book, church is mentioned more of as a social construct, as a part of being an agreeable English person, than as an actual spiritual practice. And certainly not as the driver of morality. Now, there are 3 people. Or 3 kinds of people. There are people like Mrs. Appleyard, or Mike's uncle and aunt. These are the people who see themselves as English, who are imposing an English way of life onto Australia. Mike's family have white swans on the lake, not black swans, but white swans, imported from Europe, because white swans look like home. Black swans do not. There are those people. These are people who refuse to engage with the country at all. Their repression is not that they don't have desire. It is that they refuse to allow the country into them. They are, in some ways, hermetically sealed from the country itself. It doesn't touch them. It does touch them because they're very uncomfortable. They are imposing an order on something that is completely at odds with the order of the country itself. But whether it is Mrs. Appleyard's absolutely perfectly done hair and corseted body, whether it is the having white swans on the lake and European delicacies at your garden party, whether it is whether it is a discipline that is unnatural, imposed on people. These things all conspire to either cause these characters to leave or to be destroyed. These are things that are incompatible with life in Australia. So there are several characters who leave the country. There are other characters who are destroyed over the course of the novel. The second lot of characters are the bulk of the characters. These are the characters who have, as it were, gone native. They have accepted the reality of living in Australia. They are the girls who want to take their gloves and hats off, and who are hot and fall asleep in the sun. They are the housekeeper, or the housemaid and the handyman in the school, who are going at it like rabbits. They are the coachman for Mike's family, who is practical and sensible and is able to behave in a way that works. They are the majority of the girls who are, while being attempted to be formed into these proper English ladies, are still half-wild colonial girls who are not accepting this stricture passively. They are the French teacher who has a fiancé whom she is who she is eagerly anticipating marrying. There are the bulk of the people. And then there are the three who disappear. Three who disappear. There is Miranda, there is Marion, and there is the maths teacher. Irma is not one who disappears. Irma reappears. Irma is found. And Mike is found. They both have extraordinary experiences. However, they do not disappear for good like the other three characters. Mike and Irma sit between the more earthy characters and the more ethereal characters. So the ethereal characters are the maths teacher, Marion, and Miranda. All three of whom are somehow completely unconnected with the world around them. Mike has some element of being connected to this world because when he sees the four girls cross the creek, he falls utterly in love with Miranda, a girl he sees for a few seconds, leaping across a creek and turning towards him, not even really registering that he is there. But he sees that face and that's it. He is lost for her forever. That's not normal. But that is the kind of ethereal quality. The maths teacher, who I think I would actually say is asexual, because she is not, she doesn't really fit the old spinster idea of being disapproving of sex. She is just not interested. Not interested. The three people who disappear are all virgins. Miranda is so ethereal she barely makes a mark as she walks along. She glides over the creek, whereas poor Edith almost falls in. Marion also is so abstract, much like the maths teacher, as to not be really of the world. It's she who wants to go to the mountain in the first place. and Miranda and Irma come along because they're three besties. So you have these three different types of characters, and whereas Irma is released. Irma is constantly associated with things. Whereas Marion and Miranda and even the maths teacher are much more otherworldly. Irma is anchored, and I think that's why Irma returns. Irma is anchored. She has a diamond watch. She has an emerald bracelet. We know she doesn't like the fact that the hat squishes her hair. She has a physicality about her, even if it is not a physicality that is in resonance with the world around her. She does still have a practicality, a physicality, a materiality about her. I think results in why she is returned. Even Mike, when he climbs the rock searching for the girls, is returned. Why? Because he has desire. He might be ethereal enough to fall in love with the image of a girl he saw for a fleeting second, but at the same time, he is desiring her. He has a want for her. Miranda doesn't. Miranda is disconnected from things, and I think that's why she is one of the people who doesn't return, and why Mike does return. Now, because the rock affects people differently. Edith is A, too young, and B, Edith is definitely appetites. The rock doesn't want her. Albert, the young groomsman who goes to help find Michael when he doesn't return from being out at the rock. The young police constable, Jim, the doctor, none of them are affected when they climb the rock and bring Irma down. None of them. Why? Because they are of the world, but they're also not fighting the world that they live in. This book, that one of the things that's really shocked me with this book is how incredibly sensual it is, and how much it says about sex. I didn't expect this to be a book about sex, especially not when you look at the film, which is very ethereal, very beautiful, very otherworldly. And yet the book is very, very, very much about sex. And the whole atmosphere that Joan Lindsay creates with this book is one of barely suppressed emotions. The girls in the girls' school are all sending each other valentines. There is definitely a very sapphic quality to the relationships between the girls, especially Sarah to Miranda, but not Miranda to Sarah. There is an intensity of relationship that is occurring with these young girls all pulled together into this one place, to the point that they will become hysterical at one point in the book. Towards the end of the book, there is this period, this moment of hysteria, of this outpouring of emotion, this outpouring of extreme frustration at being kept in the dark about what is actually happening, and this demand for answers. But it is very, the girls are spoken of in a very erotic manner, and one wonders, whose gaze is this for? And you realise it's not for a male gaze. Any time that the girls are spoken of in an erotic manner, it's for a female gaze. There is a genuine underlying, and not that far underlying, homoerotic quality to this book. Those desires are also seen as only disruptive if they continue, which is quite interesting. They are not seen as disruptive as such in the young girls. In the girls, because the 3 girls who disappear are 17. They're over the age of consent, and they are ready to, they're nearly leaving school. So they are ready, they're being expected to look towards men to start fulfilling the erotic desires that they have previously been directing towards other girls. And we know that this is what is expected of them, because we see several people doing this in a way. We have Irma. Once she is rescued, she will fall in love with Mike and be in love with him for the rest of her life, even though she will never see him again. She is, because she is that unearthly quality of her, like Mike, she can fall in love with someone to such a romantic degree, even though her attachment to diamonds and emeralds brought her back from wherever this strange place that the girls and one teacher, one woman, disappeared to. We also see Millie and Tom. I think Millie and Tom are actually my 2 favourite characters in the book. Millie and Tom, the housemaid and the handyman, are doing it like rabbits. They are, and what's more, nobody says a word against them doing this. That's, I think, one of the most interesting things, and it's part of the reason why the Australian context and that highly repressed quality doesn't work in Australia. The repression in this novel is not the repression of the patriarchy. It is not the repression of a religious morality. It is a self-imposed repression of being unwilling to live in the country on its terms. So that means Mrs. Appleyard is constantly fighting against the world around her because she refuses to give in to it. She refuses to accept she is not in England anymore, she is in Australia. The wealthy people have the money and the time to insulate themselves and create a fantasy world and a miniature imitation of the world that they had been in, so that they never need to actually touch the country that they have been exploiting, really. They do not need, if they choose, to actually engage with the country. So people like that are able to leave. They leave the country. People who are refusing to accept the reality of where they are living but do not have the money to isolate themselves, who are imposing a discipline and an order that cuts crossways against the natural rhythm of the country that it forces its people to flow with, they are the people who get destroyed. Sexual incontinence, shall we say, is not going to result in your destruction. Millie and Tom, as I said, have been going at it like rabbits. Millie and Tom marry, have children, and are probably the happiest couple, or the happiest characters overall in the entire novel. They're a lovely couple, and they have been going for a while. They use the events of the disappearance as a convenient way to, well, Millie's pregnant, so we're going to get married and find new positions. Everyone knows Millie and Tom are an item. Never once is it brought up that Millie and Tom are in trouble for this. there is a delightful moment when Mrs. Appleyard asks where Tom is, and Millie thinks to herself, well, half an hour ago he was lying on my bed in his underpants, which is interesting because both Tom, which is like, it's a wonderful sentence. So Tom is intimately acquainted with Millie's bed, and Millie is intimately acquainted with Tom's underpants. We now never left in any doubt as to what Tom and Millie are doing, but we also never hear a word of censure for what they are doing. Why? Because Australia is not sexually repressed. It is sexually pragmatic. Australian attitudes towards sex are not the repressive, patriarchal, moral attitudes towards sex. They are more concerned with the fact that adults are going to do this. Adults are going to do this. So is it consensual, and is it safe? Those are really where our focus is in terms of sex in this country. For a large amount of the time, because of a imbalance in the number of men to women, that there was a great paranoia about, well, what if men have sex with men? That can't be a good thing. That was their fear. They were very paranoid about the idea of men having sex with men. But fortunately, we are a far more enlightened country now, and that's not an issue. But the other thing that they were concerned about for a great deal of Australian history, unfortunately, was miscegenation, or different people of different races intermarrying. So there's that, which fortunately we got over. Took far too long, but we did get over it. So that leaves us with, is it consensual and is it safe? Obviously, is it consensual is an important one. Is it safe? But how does is it safe work? Is it consensual means I don't really, if nobody's having a problem with anything, nobody needs to know. Nobody's going to go prying into this. Just no. Is it safe? Different kinds of safe. Is it socially safe, which is where the biggest impact comes in? Is it socially safe? Is this going to result in unmarried mothers for this period? Not now. Not now. Not a problem now. Not a problem since Wettling brought in the single mother's pension. A lot of harm was done while people were terrified of that. The other thing is this going to be a problem in terms of disease? That was the other big problem, but because we are much more practical about sex, it meant that we took a practical approach when a massive, disrupting, dangerous, incurable, sexually transmitted disease washed up on our shores in the 1980s. The Australian response was it was practical, and it was a public health response rather than a moral response, because we have a much more practical attitude towards sex. And you see that in this book. This book is not about repression in terms of sexual repression. This book never once punishes anyone for having sex. The people who are punished for denying the reality of their world, for keeping themselves sealed off and refusing to engage with the world, for cutting across the channels of life in Australia. It's very hard in this country to not be aware of your physicality. All winter long, Australians will complain about how cold their houses are, and don't even get an Australian started when there's a heat wave. You will not hear complaining like you will hear of an Australian in a heat wave, which just proves our houses are built for nothing. Because we always say, oh, well, the houses are built for the heat. And then you get a heat wave where it's been hot every night for 3 days and then hot during the day for 3 days. And you have not heard complaining till you have heard an Australian complain about that. Absolutely not. So basically, you either accept the country and adapt to it, or you don't. And that is part of what's going on in this book. The sensuality of the book is deliberate. Do we ever find out what happened to the girls? No. But that is also deliberate. There is no way you can create a resolution to this. Did the girls climb the rock, fall down somewhere, disappear, and were not found? Probably, quite possibly. Why should that? Were the girls called up and taken by the landscape, by the world around them, because they were so disconnected from it? Maybe. Who knows? It's the point. This mythic story of lost children in the bush, which is a big thing. Lost children in the bush is a big thing, a big motif in Australian writing or Australian culture, full stop. Though usually now it's international tourists lost in the bush rather than children. Australian children are taught to not do that, which is part of the reason, much like the rest of the book. Yeah, people who are unfamiliar with the bush are the ones who are going to get into trouble with it, rather than people who are familiar with it and treat it with the respect it deserves. So, Picnic at Hanging Rock is how you have a Gothic without any of the trappings of Gothic, like any Australian Gothic. It is about desire, it is about repression, but not repression and desire in the same way that European stories depict repression and desire. I do encourage you to check out the book. I also encourage you to check out the 1975 Peter Weir film. And I hope you don't end up spending the rest of your life haunted by panpipes. But don't worry, you have an entire nation with you, should that happen. Anyway, I will be back again with another adventure in Australian literature, and goodbye. If you would like to support this channel, come across to the Black Cockie Press website, www.blackcockiepress.com.au, where you will find books and other writing services to help with your writing.